Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this October 21st, 2015 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony, and you're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's Pacific time on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Now, yesterday I said when I opened up my show that this was the most important show you'll ever listen to in your life. Now, whether you believe me or not is unimportant, but today I'm going to make another bold statement because I'm continuing part 2 of Mind Control Steals All Hope. But I want to say this, this show will be the most dangerous show you ever listen to, because if you begin to research what I'm going to talk about later on in the show, and you go public with it, you will be targeted. I'll explain later. However, mind control. I asked this question, what will become of humankind if not allowed to have a free mind? I believe if you don't think about these subjects, if you don't think about mind control and how it's being done on you, you'll never have an opportunity to ever have a free mind. And although it is so pervasive today, mind control in so many forms, that I believe most of humanity is clouded in some way of getting to that idea of a free mind, you must begin to think about it seriously. Now, disbelieving of mind control technologies is enabling lethal crimes against humanity. And what I say yesterday, we were talking in terms of how we were mind controlled by the educational system, how we're mind controlled by government statements, how we're mind controlled by the Vatican's idea of what they call Christianity, which in fact is a pagan religion. And we're basically, I was looking at mind control from what I would say, what you're dealing with on a daily basis, from what you get from your leaders, what you get from your pastors, what you get from your media, what you get from Hollywood, all designed to control you, like I said yesterday, like farm animals. And they're the farmers. And I said yesterday, if you begin to understand, go back into your childhood and piece together what was taught to you and what you believed and what you still cling to today from those false beliefs, you're beginning to break that cycle of being nothing but a farm animal, farmed by the controllers and the owners of you, which include the Vatican-led New World Order, because they have to control your mind, your body, and your soul, and they're not going to be happy if they leave one of those things out. There is no way on this earth you can ever get to the truth unless you begin to unravel how you've been controlled, how your mind has been controlled, what your thoughts have been, and how they linger today. For example, I could go through, and I think it's important, whatever religion you grew up in, whether it be Catholicism, Protestantism, Buddhism, Hinduism, atheism, whatever, begin to research what you've been taught about all those things. And once you start piecing together all of the things that were told you from both a secular point of view about your country, about your government, about your the leaders of the faith you were involved in. If you were a Mormon, do that as well. And you will begin to see how you've been controlled, because what's going to happen is that if you look and you start researching history, which is the natural way to go, you will find that polluted as well and changed. When I say that this world lives under what's called Jesuitism, It's not a conspiracy theory, because what's happening here, there appears to be a growing disbelief of things, that everything is just a conspiracy theory. Oh, it can't be true. He's learned that on the internet. He thinks he knows everything. And the damaging outcome of this is that you begin to hold strong to what? The beliefs you were taught as a child, even though those beliefs may be wrong. Now, I could go over many different things, and let's just do it very quickly. Growing up as a Catholic, if I go through the symbols, and I go through all of the dogmas that were taught to me, for example, the Pope is Christ on earth, and I believed that at one point. For example, if I look at all of the statues, all of the things on top of Catholic churches, all of the pagan symbols, which I thought were holy symbols, I begin to see that something's going on here. And the deeper you look into it, the more truth about how you've been mind-controlled comes out. And I could take you through every symbol, everything that I went through from the time of my confirmation, my first Holy Communion, church, going through the Stations of the Cross, going through catechism class daily, being indoctrinated with a theory that you cannot get anywhere without the priest. And when you question things, you don't question directly to God or to Jesus. You go to the priest because he has all the answers. And what does that do? That puts you under his total control. Now, you as a child, probably, if you grew up as a Catholic or a Mormon or whatever, never get to meet the top leaders of your organization, and all you do are listen to the underlings who are mimicking what they're told from when they go to seminaries, etc., etc. In other words, most of them have been mind-controlled too, and if they haven't figured it out, they're in the abyss just like you. But if they have figured it out, they do it because it's an easy life. And they're doing it basically just to get by. Now, I could go over every sign and symbol. I could spend hours talking about how I was deceived as a Catholic. And then I could go and talk about how I was deceived thinking about freedom in this country, thinking that I lived in the greatest country, the freest country in the world, with the best law system in the world. And in fact, I went to law school thinking that. And that was later in my life. I went 1 year when I was in my 20s, and then I went into journalism and began to figure out these things. And when I came out, I was in my late 30s when I started law school. I still wasn't sure about everything, and I figured this could be a way to really help people. And in a sense, you can do certain things. But when you want to talk about the tough cases, the big cases, the things that affect us totally in this world we live in from a very high level, you're not going to get any justice. And so I learned the hard way that even the things about our country, the history we received about our founding fathers, is all a lie. And once you understand that, then you try to convey it to people. They put it under what's called a conspiracy theory, because the masses, the majority of people in this country, have no idea what I am talking about. They believe in the system. They believe in the political system, and if they don't believe in the spiritual system of a one-world religion that they're beginning to form, they take an approach of, well, all of it sucks, and I'm just an atheist. And the Vatican loves that, because they have control over you there too. So I could go over all of the signs and symbols on your county courthouses, on your state capitol buildings. I could go over every single symbol in Washington, what's on top of the Capitol building there that represents a pagan goddess. I could go over the the Statue of Liberty, the Washington Monument was just considered the Freedom Monument. It's nothing more than an obelisk representing pagan worship that I've gone over many times. And then I could go over all the signs and symbols on your you might as well say on your Catholic Congress. And that's very true now when you see the Pope running things right in front of your eyes. But that is normal. That's the way they're trying to unite you under good. That is the trick. Now, once you understand this, yesterday I presented this question to you. Do you want to remain a farmed animal, thinking that freedom is actually freedom, when actually freedom is slavery, when democracy is nothing more than fascism? Do you really, and you know it, you can see the signs of it today in every aspect of your life. Now, it's easy to ignore it. Many people that talk to me say, well, I think it's pretty good. I think life here is pretty good. Well, remember in that little video presentation I let you listen to yesterday, when he said they give out more to the animals that produce, they'll give them just a little bit more to make them produce more. That's us. That's why you think it's good. But look around you. It's dwindling. And pretty soon, you're not going to be nothing more than that. Unless you see the cage you're in, you'll never get out of it. So I said, do you want to remain a farm animal? Or do you want to fly away free? And can you do that? Yes. How? I said you can answer that question because there's two approaches you have to take. One, you have to strip away any connection you have to what they call the New World Order and the Matrix. We'll use those terms. They're fashionable. But what that means is you're no longer a part of the secular society that you live in. And the second way is to be no longer a part of anything that has to do with evil, Satan. We can use that term. And find truth, both spiritually and secularly. Now, I'm going to let you figure out how to do that. And there's people, I've asked people, come on my show and tell me. And I know I've talked to people that have. And it isn't a relationship with people where you can free yourself from the chains that you're under right now. Now, what I want to get to, and I said at the beginning of the show, let me check the time here, because this is an enormous subject, and I'll bounce back and forth because mind control is pervasive. We've all been under it ever since. If you grow up in this country, you've been under it, and if you're slowly getting out of it, or if you've completely run the gamut. For example, as a journalist, I fast-forwarded my way out of this matrix, so to speak, by having a job that asked questions constantly, daily, questions that I had to ask, questions that led me to other questions that led me to other questions. And to this day, it has served one purpose. And that is to free yourself from this mind control. And how many people have you known that have left this world still chained to it, still not comprehending it? And it's very difficult. Now, many people today think they're getting out of it. The internet is filled with information. Most of it is junk. As far as I'm concerned, when you look at all of it, you can go from one topic to another and find so much stuff. And the more you ask questions, the more you will whittle that down to what the truth really is. Now, I said a long time ago, the only truth there really is when you put your little head on the pillow. But ask yourself this question when you start tossing the truth out to yourself. Is it your head that's on that pillow or the heads of other people that have told you those things? So what I'm getting at is that, there are truly genuine, and I'm going to use the word conspiracy, because covert crime in this organization called the Vatican-led New World Order, and many of the things that we bring up on the show exist, and they thrive due to the lack of awareness by many people. Now, when you get into this subject, what you will get into when you get into mind control and you get deeply into it, it isn't just Hollywood. It isn't just what you've been taught in schools. It isn't just things that you've been lied to about in history. It isn't just all those things that are subliminally out there that are leading you to believe that you live in the best country in the world and the Vatican is the biggest and greatest benevolent organization that ever existed. And the Pope is the king of all who brings unity to everyone and peace and freedom. There's much more, much more to mind control. And when I began to research how deep it's gone, how it's not just subliminal messages, or turn on the TV and be mind controlled, or go to school and be mind controlled, there actually is weaponry, mind control technologies that exist today and are destroying the lives of hundreds of thousands of people around the world. Now, when I first started to research microwave technology and mind control, I looked at it and said, it's impossible. It is impossible that this could happen to people, that they are being targeted by radio microwaves that can change and alter their thinking patterns, that can actually burn their skin, that can actually disrupt their lives, can actually make them go crazy. And I said to myself, okay, get into this with an open mind. And this was back 8, 9, 10, 11 years ago. Get into this with an open mind, Greg. A free mind. What is really going on here? We all heard of MK Ultra. Oh, and that only happens to a few people. But since I'm not an expert in these technologies, I've went to the experts through the years and found out they exist, and they've existed for a long, long time. Things that I witnessed to these hundreds of people I interviewed, and I spent almost 2 years looking into this every week, to a point where it began my research into targeted individuals, both in the microwave weaponry and also targeted individuals that I met, for example, like Tupper Saucy, who wrote the book Rulers of Evil. Other individuals like Tony Alamo's ministry, and all those people that were targeted. It led me into who was being targeted, for what reasons, and why. And everything came to me when I realized that those people that are speaking heavily out against the Vatican will be targeted. And then I said, well, when I'm looking at microwave technology and how that is used, and I'm going to explain it, because this is what I said is the most dangerous show you'll ever listen to. If you want to research this and go public with it, you will be targeted. Take my advice, because I was. I almost let myself to be a guinea pig in this subject, because I spent hours talking to hundreds of people all over the world, trying to hone in on exactly what's happening. People that I met, people that told me horror stories, showed me the scars they had on their arms from this. And where did it lead me to? It led me to understand what microwave technology is, how it can be used on people, And then how, when you try to tell people, they think you're crazy. Oh, that can't happen. It's a technological holocaust, is what I'm talking about here. And it can happen to you, and you don't even know it. There's radio wave. Now here's certain things that go on. When I talk to these people, I found them to be in 3 categories. And I wasn't sure sometimes who was who. I know there were the government shills that were put there to be so I could interview them and they could lead me into the directions they wanted to. Then I know there were people that were completely delusional, and I couldn't tell whether they were just jumping on board to get attention or whether they actually were being targeted. Then I know there were the true targeted people because I met them, talked to them, and I began to understand the differences, and I could kind of figure out who was who. Now, when I was targeted, I questioned it even myself. And I'll tell you, when I get into talking about some of the symptoms of microwave technology in the next half hour, you will understand that it's difficult to tell. You'll question whether you're actually going crazy. And then you start seeking out help. And where are you going to go? Most people fall right into the lap of the organization that actually started the whole thing. Psychiatry. Now, what is this I'm talking about? We're talking about mind control. Mind control from when we started this show, we just turn the TV on, you're getting mind control. Okay. Go to school, you're getting mind control. I can deal with that. I can figure that out. Okay, the government lies to me. I can start sifting through history like I did when I lived in Italy, and I had the opportunity to see the country from a different angle. That helped me get out of this matrix, and I started to research certain things that led me to believe the Vatican is evil, and the United States government was formed by them, and the founding fathers were not what they say they are. They were actually in the pocket of Rome, and this country was founded, the Bill of Rights and the whole thing was founded not for the guise of freedom to let you think you'll get it, but one day they were going to snatch it from you, and that day's coming closer. Just like Vatican says it came here to get away from oppression. They were the oppressors. They came here to get their foot in the door and weasel their way into a Protestant country and turn it into a Catholic one and turn it into a fascist state because their MO all around the world is that. And check out their 195 or 200 concordats that they have all over the world with countries. They'll deal with anybody, and they don't do it for unity and good. They do it to basically control the Roman Empire. The Vatican, the same thing. Now, I know there's going to be people that say that's a conspiracy theory. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. They've been mind controlled. Everything to them, unless it falls into their little pocket or baggy, their little handbag of beliefs. It's a conspiracy theory because I believe my government. Oh, there's a few bad seeds there. There's a few bad seeds in the Vatican. But basically, that's the way it is. They couldn't do this. Well, they could, and they have, and they will, and they're doing it right now. And when I get back, we'll talk about technology and microwave weaponry and how that is the ultimate mind control technique. Back in 3 minutes.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased. It has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal, and I said at the outset this was the most dangerous show you'll ever listen to. If you really take this seriously and you want to research it yourself, find out how people are being targeted by the use of the ultimate mind control method, and that is to disrupt brain patterns with lethal technology that exists and has been... Look, I checked it out. I talked to the military. They have admitted it. Talked to many scientists. This technology exists. It's being used on the population, and people are unaware of the symptoms, and we'll get into that. And also, I can tell you that I was targeted for a period of time. I don't know if it goes on every now and then at this point, but I'll get into that as well, because once you do this, and you go as public as I did with so many people, I talked to hundreds of people, that I had to answer this question. Is this the ultimate mind control? Is it the ultimate way to control the population? It is. They're not satisfied with the subliminal, with Hollywood, with just telling you and changing history and writing books that make no sense and telling you, let me give you an example of how people still hang on. Whether you think you're free or not, it doesn't matter sometimes, because it is so difficult for people to... I'll just give you the example of, what kind of earth do you live on? Is it flat or round? And people will use every technique they can to prove it is round, because that's what they were told when they were a child. They saw a globe when they were a child. They've been told that by every pastor that ever lived. And when you start realizing that NASA has lied to you, and you begin to really look at it as with a free, open mind, you will see that there are big questions about the universe we live in and what exactly this planet is all about. And I say there's a good argument that this is not a globe, and that we're surrounded by an ice wall and it's a flat earth. And I suggest that you begin looking into it. A free mind is an open mind. Everything, not just pick and choose. So anyway, what do I want to do with mind control in the ultimate what I consider the ultimate technique here? I want to connect the dots between these false depressions in people and other mental illness labels, microwave targeting, And these harmful psychiatric pharmaceuticals and eugenic program that is in existence today, I believe the psychiatry was formed as a sort of eugenics program. And you'll see the roots of psychology and psychiatry come from Germany. And we'll take a look at that. And we'll look at some of the research that's been done on this, Bernard Schreiber's research, involved in the continuation of a Holocaustal crime against humanity since Hitler's Holocaust. And when you understand that Hitler was funded and was a part and parcel and selected by the Vatican, when you start connecting that, then you'll see what I'm talking about, that I'm not delusional, that I'm not a conspiracy theorist. How about General Barry Trower? He's an expert in microwave weapons. They began perfecting their ability to remotely inflict symptoms that mimic mental illness in people in the 1950s. And that field of psychology was making shifts from Freudian methods to other things. And thank God for some people that have come out and talked about it. And one guy was Stephen Zaz. Stood up for humanity against the classifying of all these false mental illness labels and the drugging of America. That's the final connection I want to make, but I have to go back here a bit. And let's look at what microwave weaponry is first. And then I want to tell you a lot of the people I started interviewing, some of the things I found out with direct connections to the Vatican, in their schooling systems, and especially in Canada. It's an unbelievable story called the Duplessis Orphans that I covered for years with Rob. What was his name? Wrote a couple books about it. Rob lives in Montreal. Rob Vanneau. But according to this is the general outline of what you're dealing with. Now, according to reports, radio waves tuned to the same frequency as human brain can remotely flood whole communities and homes or target specific individuals with finer beams shot directly into various parts of the brain. You see, they don't want to just do this subliminally anymore. They don't want you to just... They want to make sure they're working on ways that they can get right directly to you. This has been verified by the highest levels of the American military with a caveat. We will use this type of weaponry, on enemies of our country and perhaps unruly mobs. Now, these radio waves can be encoded with, again, subliminal messaging. Hey, if you're not getting it, from the TV or Hollywood or your government officials or the Vatican, why don't we make sure you get it? Now, they encode these subliminal messages, and they set them at certain frequencies that interfere with our brain's natural rhythms and functions. Now, results depend on which part of the brain is intruded upon, what frequency and intensity is used, and can range from mild brainwashings to mental numbness, interrupted thoughts, to brain damage and complete technological control of a human being. And I'll tell you, I spoke with people that had the most serious types of targeting where people would not believe them. And when it happened to me, I began to believe them a little bit. And the reason it did is I think they were saying I was in an area that was very susceptible to this. I wasn't protected by any mountains or ranges, because this weaponry is used through antennas. It's used through, I don't believe it's used through satellites because I don't believe there are satellites. But they can do it just as they do ground GPS, similar systems. The technology is quite advanced, but there are ways you can protect yourself from it. Minimally, and then you never really know. But anyway, so this type of control, it appears that it can be done as remotely as through what I'm talking about, this antenna system that we have. Just the same way they can get a TV signal to you, And all this rings true in me because I saw it happen to people. I saw it happen to myself, I believe. And it needs to be realized and stopped. But will it be? No, it's only getting worse. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about it. Now, when you listen to yourself, our instincts, we can feel that something is horribly wrong in our world, can't you? We can feel that, but it's more than a feeling. There's something unusual happening, and what we must now do is not to just blindly disbelieve of, these behavior modification technology. We have to realize that's the world we live in, and it's enabling, if we don't look at these crimes, it's enabling these crimes to continue since at least the 60s. Now, it sounds much like science fiction, doesn't it? And so outrageously inhumane, and that's why you'll see all these science fiction shows on Hollywood to make you think it's disbelief when it's actually the truth. It needs our awareness, and that's where it begins. Now, according to experts, mind control microwave weapons are most successful on people who are taking mood-altering drugs, like antidepressants, etc. This is beginning to see how the pharmaceutical industry plays. Now, there's a website I found this little video, and I want to play it for you. And this was a mainstream broadcast, and it in 2008, news reports stated that these drugs that pharmaceuticals are selling in psychiatry were being found in around 24 major public water supplies in the United States. In 2013, a secretary at New Hampshire Environmental Protection Agency said that these drugs are still being found in our public water supplies. Let's listen to what she had to say in this little news broadcast. Drugs and drinking water. Pharmaceutical drugs found in our drinking water. Now, it's a very short little mainstream report.
Now, the water you drink may have more in it than you bargained for. The Associated Press reports that there were traces of drugs, including prescription medicines, in the water supplies of 24 U.S. metropolitan areas. They include anticonvulsants, mood stabilizers, sex hormones, and prescription drugs and over-the-counter pain medications. In Philadelphia, in fact, the AP says tests showed the presence of 56 drugs, including the antibiotics amoxicillin and tetracycline. Caffeine and codeine were among 7 drugs found in northern New Jersey water, and in Washington, water contains, among other things, small amounts of the painkillers ibuprofen and naproxen. I think that what this report really highlights is that these drugs are getting into our tap water, and that this is a real issue that government needs to step up and not ignore, and really start looking into what are the health effects of having these drugs in our drinking water.
Well, you know what? What she just said is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. The government is doing it. In the pharmaceutical industry with the guy. How do you think they get in there? And she wants the government to help. Well, forget about it. I mean, the report comes out, people go, well, it's just a couple little things, it's probably not true, etc. This general numbness, the growing lack of care, growing levels of discord, let the government solve it. I believe that a lot what's going on in the world today is due to this criminal use of radio wave technologies and psychiatric pharmaceuticals that are used on people. This statistically can add to the chaos they want, the pain and suffering of the general public, without you even knowing it. Now, let me give you I'm probably going to have to do a couple of shows on this because I want to play some things by a couple of the people I mentioned earlier who are experts in this field. But I want to give you some of my personal thoughts about this after interviewing hundreds of people. The technologies exist, and they're easily being used on many, many people around the world without even knowing it. Now, I know it was used on me in a certain area after I interviewed a bunch of people. First, they tried a little bit of gang stalking where they sent a couple people to my house to scare the hell out of me by just messages. Then I can remember when they slit my dog open when I was gone, and 60 stitches later I saved her. And that was a kind of a message. Then the third one was when I began to wake up and see little burns on my arm, little red cigarette burns. And all of a sudden, during this period of time when I was interviewing these people, I was feeling more and more agitated. I used to have parrots, and I had one Goffin white cockatoo that was actually going crazy. Flew into the wall. Finally, the door opened a little bit, and this bird was always so stable. Flew out, I never saw her again. So I knew something was going on. That bird knew something was going on. But when I'd say, I knew from talking to people that had similarly. So what happened? Let me tell you exactly what happened. I got to the point during this period of time when I was doing my show that I could barely do it. Put it together. And so I had this feeling I had to leave there. And I did. And the place I went, just luckily, was on the side of this big, huge mountain. And all of a sudden, things started to calm down. And the only lingering thing I've had since, and I'll be quite honest with you, and people say this is a medical condition, etc., but I have a severe ringing in both ears that have two frequencies going on at the same time, all the time. That's why many times I sleep with the TV on. I don't listen to it, but I have to have something in the background to drown it out on certain nights. Other nights I'm so tired it doesn't bother me. Now, are those lingering effects from that? There is a medical condition of ringing in the ears. Then they tell you to take all these drugs to get rid of it, and the side effects of these drugs may cause heart attack. I love those drug commercials. And I did a whole comedy routine on them. Get rid of your headache with these great pills. The side effects may be a loss of a limb. You may see your arm turn green and fall off. But, you won't have a headache. And it goes on and on and on. It's insane. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that what's happening now is not natural. Now, I looked into it, and I'm going to tell you, I can go back to specifically all the people, and I almost have them embedded in my mind. Some of the stories were horrendous, how their lives were being turned around. Then certain people were starting to go public with it, and they were even being targeted even more. Then I met people that I met a woman that had to sleep in her backyard. Insane stories and I checked it out. It was true. And I could not believe this was going on until I saw it firsthand. Then I began to look at where this came from. Now, I believe it comes from the psychiatric community. I believe that when you talk about the Vatican, what's their involvement here? Well, you start looking at a case called the Duplessis orphans that I researched. Duplessis orphans were guinea pigs in Canada being used at a psychiatric clinic to test this stuff out, test these drugs, test all these microwave weaponry, tortures, etc., etc. And guess where they came from? Catholic orphanages. And guess how they got there? The nuns forged documents that these lost kids, these orphans, were mentally ill so they could get in there when in fact they weren't. And you don't tell me there isn't a Vatican connection? What about the mission schools where they slaughtered or they genocide all these kids from the Native American schools in both Canada and America? I checked those stories out for years. And the targeting exists in so many ways. Then what about the more, should we call it civil way to target people when you get a Christian ministry like the Alamo ministry and you put the minister in jail for 175 years. You take away children from people who all they want to do is worship God and do good things for people. And I talk to them constantly. Is that a more civil way to do it? And then there's this obsessant technological mind control going on. That's why I said it's the most dangerous show. You may not even know it's happening to you. Now, one horrible part of this, one of the most horrible parts, is that well, before I get into the devastating reality of this, on a milder level of technological targeting, people's brains are being interfered with in ways that prevent the natural process of personal and spiritual growth. That's what they want to stop. Both a personal growth and your spiritual growth. The harm that inflicts cannot be overstated because it hurts every level of your existence, especially for long-term victims that I've interviewed. Their lives are destroyed. I've been a woman, and she would call her completely insane. She wasn't. She drove around. Her whole car was filled with newspapers. She used to wear a helmet, and you would say, oh, she's one of those tinfoil people. But when I looked at her story and then saw what they actually did to her, where she came from, how it happened, I believed her. And there were lucid moments of her interviews, of times I had to check some of these people out and look at their environment, where they were. And it's amazing that many people have fallen prey to this, whether it be on a milder level or whether it be you be the guinea pig of their severe torturing. And most victims, and basically what happens then, the community thinks they're mentally ill. But when I look around me and in this world, it seems too big and too damaging to ever change, right? But I ask you, expose this, at least, before more people are hurt. Maybe that'll help. Now, I said I'd look at the most horrible thing here. And that is, due to this lack of public and the law enforcement and medical field awareness of this technological crimes, and they're allowing it to continue, you can't get help from them. You're forced, if you're in this situation, to go into psych evaluations and falsely labeled as mentally ill when you try to seek support and help, because you're not going to, most people don't believe you. And this is what did Martin Luther King say? He said, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by bad people, but the silence over that by good people. Now, there's so much more I want to talk about. I only got 3 minutes. And I wanted to, maybe I'll have to do this tomorrow. We're going to look at what certain experts who've looked at this for years and will verify that it exists, so that you don't think this is just a conspiracy theory. And then we'll look at some of really how the psychiatric community and the pharmaceutical community works together in order to basically control you, to basically use mind control at the highest levels with drugs, with technology, along with their partners in Hollywood and the media and the Vatican and your government and the history books. So when we're talking about an age of technological deception, to me this is the ultimate in weaponry. And I think the way I will look at it, no matter how it's being used, it has to be stopped. And I believe that this has a lot to do with chemtrails. People say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, these technologies, if you start looking at it, can be shot from the sky and used, and they bounce off the ionosphere in order to be redirected. And could the metal, see all these, they're spraying the world with all these metals. Could that be used to help direct these weaponry? Interesting. Kind of charge the environment with all these metals that are up in the sky right now. However it's being done, your first reaction, it needs to be stopped. My question to you is how? If the very people that say they're trying to protect you are the ones doing it to you, I think I'll leave you to answer that question. Because the next question tomorrow, I'm going to talk about, we're going to go into some of the experts talking about this. Then who's doing the targeting? It's not only the U.S. government and all of its entities. It's also in Russia, Britain, Germany, and other places. I found it to be all over the world. I've talked to people in most every part of the world. Also, we'll connect the dots with the psychiatric community and the pharmaceutical community tomorrow on the Investigative Journal. Good night.